Jungkook shocked, Jin tearfully mentions Jimin. ARMY breaks down in tears. A night that changed everything. He promised he'd come. With just 3 words, Jin shattered the silence of the O2 Arena in London and millions of hearts across the globe. But who was he talking about? And why did Jungkook appear visibly shaken moments later, as if something unspoken had finally burst into reality? On a night meant to celebrate Jin's solo return, BTS fans were instead left clutching their chests, tears falling freely, as one haunting phrase echoed beyond the arena and across continents. Why did that single sentence carry the weight of years? Why did Jin, usually composed, seem on the edge of breaking? And more importantly, why wasn't Jimin there? This was not supposed to happen. The night had begun with a kind of electricity that only a BTS-related event can generate. Fans from every corner of the world had gathered under the dazzling lights of London's most iconic stage. The return of Jin, the eldest, the bridge, the heart of BTS, following his military service was, by all accounts, a moment of triumph. But it quickly became something else. Something raw. Something no one was prepared for. During the emotional solo soundcheck ahead of his performance, Jin stood before thousands. The arena buzzed with excitement. Phones were out, smiles wide. Then came the silence. A long, unexpected pause. And then, in a soft, almost trembling voice, Jin uttered, he promised he'd come. No context, no name, just pain. And yet, everyone knew exactly who he meant. Jimin. The transformation in the atmosphere was instant. Laughter stopped. Smiles fell. The energy drained from the crowd like air from a punctured balloon. Phones that had been raised high for recording suddenly lowered, hands trembling. Even those watching from home reported feeling a chill, as if something sacred had been touched. BTS fans, known as ARMY, had spent over a decade understanding the nuances between the members. So when Jin looked out into the crowd with a ghost of a smile and spoke those words, it didn't feel like a performance. It felt like a confession. Why wasn't Jimin there? Just days prior, Jimin had shared serene vacation photos, tropical sun, empty streets, a calm solitude that seemed almost curated. He looked peaceful, but lonely. He wore black, he walked alone.
No captions, no tags.
No trace of his location. ARMY immediately began connecting the dots. Was he supposed to be in London? Had something changed at the last minute? Or was Jin speaking into the void, addressing a presence that was never going to arrive? The pain was evident. Jungkook, who had been watching from the wings, was later seen wiping his face. Whether it was sweat or tears, no one could confirm. But those who knew him could tell. Something had shifted. For a group that prided itself on togetherness, even during solo activities, this absence was thunderous. And the fact that Jin chose to acknowledge it so delicately, yet so publicly, only deepened the mystery. He promised he'd come. The phrase wasn't shouted. It wasn't part of the script. It was whispered like a secret too heavy to carry alone. And that was what broke people. Jin didn't accuse. He didn't elaborate. He just said it and moved on, launching into a heart-wrenching rendition of The Astronaut, a song already laden with themes of distance and longing. The emotion in his voice was undeniable. The tremble, the way he paused before the chorus, the way his eyes scanned the crowd afterward, not in celebration, but as if looking for someone who wasn't there. Millions of fans watching online froze. Comments poured in by the second. I can't breathe. Why do I feel like I just witnessed a heartbreak? That wasn't for us. That was for Jimin. Speculation intensified as more footage from the event surfaced. Jin's subtle pauses. The way his voice cracked during certain lines. The moment he looked skyward during the bridge. And then there was Jungkook, usually composed, who seemed visibly affected after the performance. A staff member reportedly offered him water, but he didn't respond. His jaw was clenched, his gaze distant. One ARMY wrote, He looked like he had just heard something he wasn't ready to face. Some fans began to theorize. Was Jimin in London but chose not to attend? Did something happen behind the scenes? Or was this the culmination of an emotional rift that no one wanted to acknowledge? A few recalled an old interview where Jeon called Jimin the most emotionally intuitive member, someone who always knew what the others were feeling without them saying a word. The irony was painful, because now it was Jeon who was speaking, and Jimin who was silent. Social media exploded with heartbreak, theories, denials. Please. It's not just about missing a show, one fan wrote. It feels like something has been unraveling slowly, and this was the moment the thread snapped. Others begged for calm, reminding fellow fans that BTS had always faced challenges together, and this might just be another chapter in their ongoing journey. But it wasn't just fans who were affected. Insiders close to the event reported an unusually somber backstage atmosphere following the performance. Jeon reportedly remained in his dressing room for over an hour alone. No photos were taken.
No interviews granted.
Jungkook left the venue early. Staff members were tight-lipped. Still, not everyone saw it as a negative. Some interpreted the moment as a subtle affirmation of their unbreakable bond, a quiet way of saying, even if you're not here, you're still part of me. A silent message from one brother to another. After all, BTS has always thrived on nuance, on what wasn't said out loud, but deeply felt. Maybe this was just another example, and yet, for many, it still hurt. This was supposed to be Jin's night. A victory, a joyful return. Instead, the most unforgettable moment was a whisper about someone who wasn't there. And it spoke louder than any song. He promised he'd come. Past tense. Not he's coming, not he might show up, but he promised. Which means he didn't. The implications were gut-wrenching. Some fans recalled Jimin's increasingly quiet public appearances in recent months, while others like RM and Jungkook had been active, appearing in art galleries, filming promotional material, posting regularly. Jimin had become more elusive. His posts were minimal, his captions cryptic. One photo simply read, "Still walking." Fans are now reading it differently. Does this point to a growing internal distance among the members? Or is it just the toll of fame, age, and individual growth? The truth is, BTS has always walked a delicate line between unity and individuality. But this moment, this one phrase, may have just revealed how fragile that line really is. Even veteran journalists covering the event were stunned. One music critic tweeted, "In all my years of covering global artists, I've never seen a crowd go from euphoria to silence so fast." Jin's words cut through everything. You could hear hearts breaking. In a fandom where hope is currency, this moment became a debt. Fans needed answers. But BTS has never been one to offer them on demand. They speak when they're ready. And sometimes, they don't speak at all, which is why this moment, short, unscripted, vulnerable, feels monumental. Now, the world watches and waits. Will Jimin respond? Will he appear at another stop in the tour? Will Jeon address the moment further? Or will they both, in true BTS fashion, let it linger in silence? A message only they truly understand. In the days following the performance, online discussions only grew more intense. Footage of Jin's voice breaking was remixed into tributes. Threads tracked the timeline of events leading up to London. Side-by-side comparisons of Jeon and Jimin's last public appearances began circulating. Fans dug into lyrics, rewatched old V-Lives. Every moment was reinterpreted in light of what had just happened. And then came Jungkook's message on a quiet Sunday morning. Jungkook posted a brief message on Weverse. Still together. Always. He didn't mention names. He didn't elaborate. But in the aftermath of London, it was impossible not to read it as a response. Still together. Always. Was it a reassurance? A rebuttal? Or a plea? We may never know. But what's clear is this. Something real happened that night in London. Something that cut deeper than choreography. something that reminded ARMY that even legends have fragile moments. Even brothers have silences that ache. As of now, Jimin remains quiet. Jin has not commented again. And Jungkook's post stands alone, like a lantern in the dark. But one thing remains etched in the minds of millions. He promised he'd come. And with that, a chapter began. Not one of closure, but of aching questions. And the wait continues. Did it really happen? Jungkook's shock and Jin's tears for Jimin. A collective breakdown or a calculated illusion? In the aftermath of one of the most emotionally charged moments in BTS history, we are left not only with the echo of Jin's trembling words, he promised he'd come, but with a cascade of questions that demand far more than emotional engagement. Now, as the dust settles and the euphoria of the performance fades, a more crucial phase begins. The phase of analysis, reflection, and above all, skepticism. It is undeniable that the scene unfolded with dramatic intensity. Jin, standing on one of the world's most prestigious stages, visibly moved, his voice cracking as he recalled a promise, unfulfilled, haunting, and highly suggestive. Jungkook, seemingly shaken, his body language betraying an inner unrest that cannot be casually dismissed. Jimin, absent. Silent. Unreachable. The crowd, frozen. Global fans, in tears. But amidst this whirlwind of sentiment and speculation, we must now ask the most uncomfortable question of all. Did this moment truly reflect reality? Or was it, in part or in full, a constructed narrative meant to provoke, to trend, and to manipulate sentiment on a scale we are only beginning to comprehend? This is not an accusation. It is an invitation to critical thinking in a media landscape oversaturated with curated performances, viral soundbites, and algorithm-driven emotional triggers. It becomes essential to pause and consider the following. Are we responding to truth, or merely reacting to a powerful illusion? The video clips circulated widely on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and rapidly amassed millions of views within hours. Hashtags trended across continents. Fans reposted slowed-down footage of Jin's statement. Body language analysts emerged overnight. Emotional music overlays intensified the gravity of the moment. Edits with mournful captions like, "He waited for someone who never came," filled timelines. But here lies the danger. In our rush to feel, are we forgetting to think? Let us ask plainly, what was actually said? He promised he'd come. No name, no context, no direct reference to Jimin. Was it about him? Possibly. Probably. But certainly, this, in itself, warrants deep reflection. Is it responsible to draw definitive conclusions based on a single unscripted statement, no matter how emotionally charged? Or are we, as a collective, complicit in creating an emotional reality that may never have existed? In a time where fan culture, media sensationalism, and personal longing intersect so potently, can we trust what we see? Moreover, what do we make of the suddenness of the silence that followed? Not just in the arena, but in official channels.
No clarifications. No confirmations. No denials.
The void speaks as loudly as the phrase itself. And yet, the silence can be interpreted in countless ways. It could be respect for privacy. It could be a carefully orchestrated ambiguity. Or it could mean nothing at all. Are we witnessing a private disappointment that accidentally slipped into public view? Or are we witnessing the most meticulously executed emotional bait of the year? Consider the following. In an era where public perception is as valuable as product sales, where every headline, every trend, every moment of virality contributes to an artist's legacy and financial value, is it possible that emotional storytelling has become a strategic asset? We do not suggest that. Jin's emotions were false, nor do we claim that Jungkook's visible reaction was rehearsed. But we must consider whether the presentation of these emotions and the public's rapid emotional response was anticipated, or worse, expected. Could this moment have been intended to serve multiple audiences simultaneously? Those yearning for a heartfelt reunion, those fearful of internal division, those desperate for any sign of continued intimacy among the members. What if this wasn't a failure of attendance, but a triumph of emotional engineering? We urge the audience not to fall into easy conclusions. The idea that Jimin deliberately avoided the event is powerful, but is there evidence beyond implication? Is absence always evidence of abandonment? Or could it have been a scheduling conflict, a health issue, a silent act of protest, or none of the above? Remember, the human mind is drawn to narrative. We seek closure. We need explanations. In the absence of facts, we create our own, and we share them until they feel true. This is not unique to the BTS fandom. It is a phenomenon deeply embedded in digital culture. But the sheer scale and intensity of BTS's global presence amplifies these effects exponentially. What then? Is the responsibility of the audience? It is not only to empathize. It is to question. Ask yourself, is this a private emotional rift accidentally exposed, or a public performance engineered for maximum viral impact? Is the pain we witness spontaneous, or the result of meticulous emotional framing? Are we consuming truth, or participating in its fabrication? Even now, forums and social platforms remain ablaze with fan theories, video dissections, and speculative timelines. But amidst the noise, a disturbing trend is emerging: the loss of discernment. The line between journalism and fiction, between emotional truth and strategic manipulation, is growing dangerously thin. Numerous content creators have built entire narratives around this moment, crafting stories from half sentences, extrapolating context from visual micro-expressions, and asserting conclusions as though they were undisputed facts. But where is the verification? Where is the accountability? It is important to state clearly, most of the available footage and analysis comes from unofficial sources. These include fan edits, influencer interpretations, and unverifiable eyewitness accounts. The platforms involved, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, are not structured to support journalistic integrity. They are optimized for engagement, for virality, for emotion. Therefore, the onus falls on us, the consumers, to uphold a higher standard. Emotional manipulation thrives in environments of uncritical acceptance. If we do not interrogate what we consume, we enable the very sensationalism we claim to resist. What if this story becomes legend, and yet it was never real? It would not be the first time, nor the last of BTS as a cultural entity transcends music. It is a global emotional system, complex, volatile, and deeply intimate. Its members are not just performers. They are emotional touchstones for millions. In such a system, even the smallest gesture is magnified. Every silence is a statement. Every tear becomes a symbol. Every absence becomes a wound. But we must not confuse emotional resonance with empirical truth. The two are not the same, though we do not claim to know what truly happened in London. But we assert that not knowing is precisely why critical thinking is essential. Without it, we risk turning artists into vessels for our projections and moments into myths that in the end, perhaps this moment should not be remembered solely for what was said, or even for what was felt, but for how it revealed something deeper about the world we live in, a world where perception eclipses fact, a world where emotion is currency, a world where the truth may not matter if the story is strong enough. And so we ask again, do you believe this truly happened? Or do you believe it was designed for you to believe it did? Are you reacting to reality, or to a version of it shaped by digital momentum and emotional contagion? Is this event a heartbreak or a masterstroke? Your answer matters, not just for how we interpret this one moment, but for how we interpret all information moving forward. The emotional bond between BTS and ARMY is historic. It has reshaped fandom, music, and even the definition of global celebrity. But that bond must not come at the cost of critical literacy. If we lose the ability to ask questions, to doubt, to verify, then we lose the very tools that make connection meaningful. This report does not seek to convince. It seeks to challenge. To provoke thought. To disturb the comfort of assumption. The phrase, "he promised he'd come," will echo for a long time. But whether it echoes as a cry of pain, a whisper of fiction, or a carefully scripted masterpiece, that is up to you. Think carefully. Was this heartbreak? Or was it strategy? Was it authenticity? Or performance? The answer may never come. But the question must always remain. Thank you